This is a rebroadcast of the Eau Claire City Plan Commission meeting. The audio for this program can be heard on WRFP LP 101.9 FM. This program was recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television.
I'd like to call this evening's Planning Commission meeting to order. And again, appreciate all of you with us this evening for joining us. Again, if you would, please turn your cell phones off or to silent. And then secondly, if you wish to participate in tonight's meeting, if you would, please fill out one of the yellow pieces of paper on the back table there, and then bring it up to Ryan here at the front desk. And then when you come up to the podium, please introduce yourself with your name and your address. And with that, we'll get started with agenda item number 1, which is a rezoning from TC3 to C3P at 3912 Melby Street.
This is the property on the north side of Melby, east of Highway 53 or Hastings Way. And the area mostly has commercial zoning around it. That's an aerial photo of the site. And you can see there was extensive outdoor storage on the property, which has now been removed. And then this is the general development plan for the property with Melby 10th or 110th, and then the one existing warehouse building left. Subdivides it into 3 lots, 1, 2, 3, 4 lots as the development plan for the property. The development plan shows a warehouse facility on this lot, storage units on the northern lot, future commercial development on the 2 other lots fronting Melby Street. Applicant states he intends to locate his construction business in the existing building and then would use that for the warehouse for storage of equipment, trucks, and trailers. We did place in the report a section of city code which basically precludes outdoor storage because of the commercial zoning proposed for the property. An applicant will need to conduct his construction business in accordance with this provision. It does allow parking of trucks and trailers on the site, but no outdoor storage. The development plan then shows the property being divided into 4 lots, which can be done by certified survey map. Site plans reviewed by the Plan Commission would then be required for each of the lots as they develop. The comprehensive plan does identify the areas being appropriate for commercial development, and we would recommend approval.
Any questions for Darrell? Commissioner Peterson.
Where's Michaud Street, where the water exists?
Right there.
That's
Oh, the water? I think it runs the entire length of the road. The water that's there now.
Is that also 110th then?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for Darrell? I guess that's it. Thank you. Is the applicant here? Mr. Larson, did you want to come up? Did you have anything you wanted to add, Mr. Larson?
Actually, basically, we're just asking to go from a temporary to a permanent zoning, same status.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
First off, I didn't hear anything any of you
Yeah,
said.
that's what I thought. So just wondering if you had anything you wanted to add to Mr. Tufte's presentation?
Yeah.
Anything you wanted to add to that?
Well, basically, it'll have a different use, but the same, then again, the same use. The new owner is a contractor also. He's going to divide it into, I've never seen this plan actually, 4 parts.
Okay.
But, so, right now it's very bare.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
Also, of the three units on there, one already has been made permanent.
Of the 3 units up, one has already what?
There's three landowners. One was made permanent some years ago.
Okay,
I wasn't aware that it wasn't, and the third owner are aware of it, I told them. So 2 of them were never made permanent when they came into the city of Eau Claire.
okay. Okay, all right, thanks for coming up.
Yep.
Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Again, I'll ask if there's anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Looking for a motion to approve the rezoning from TC3 to C3P. Mr. Peterson,
I'll make a motion in favor of the rezoning.
we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is passed. Congratulations. Thank you. Agenda item number 2, public hearing for recommendation, a rezoning for 2 20-unit community-based residential facilities, Stonewood Drive.
This is the site on the south side of Stonewood Drive, east of Mill Run Road, south of Highway 12, excuse me. There is commercial zoning across the road, multifamily zoning around the site to the south. An aerial photo then showing the site, the condominiums to the west, patio homes across the pond to the south, vacant commercial to the north. This is the existing general development plan for the property, which is proposed to be amended. It had commercial zoning along the north side, and then the condominium projects along the south side. The first phase was actually built. The second phase has been approved and not built. The amendment then is from this walking path to the east. The amendment then from that walking path to the east is to replace the condominium project with 2 community-based residential facilities. The first one is an assisted living for the elderly with a shared parking lot and then a future memory care facility to the east. And then there's a building elevation depicting the appearance of the buildings. There's also a narrative that was provided by applicant for the project. The change from a condominium to assisted living and memory care actually results in less parking and traffic demand. The proposed senior assisted living and memory care facility is typically a compatible use when adjacent to multifamily development. There are some concerns with paratransit needs for these types of facilities, and that is addressed in the transit section in the site plan analysis. Under state law, CBRFs are allowed up to 16 units, and then an exception is needed if they're bigger. And that's one of the other requests here. Also under state law, if they're within 2,500 feet of an existing CBRF, they need an exception. And this will be within 2,500 feet of each other. Plus then there's another CBRF across Mill Run Road to the west of this site on the north side of Renee Drive. We did place in the report the provisions of the zoning code applicable to these exceptions. Again, we would note senior assisted living and memory care facilities normally have minimal impact within an area due to their parking, traffic, and other activities being relatively small. In terms of the site plan, then, these are actually only shown as 18-unit buildings, even though the CBRF request came in at 20 units. Their required parking is 27 stalls for both. They do show a 33 stall parking lot. That access drive should be aligned at a right angle to the street. That street should be labeled as a public right-of-way, not a private drive. They show the property line for this project running down the middle of that pathway. If that's the case, then we need to have documentation that this assisted living and memory care facility is going to be part of the maintenance of that pathway, which is a master condominium for this entire project. If that's not the case, then they should move this property line slightly to the east and probably shift this building 10 foot to the east, so this trail is all with the condominium project to the west. It's not clear in our mind as to the driveway for this project and parking, how it aligns and it impacts the building immediately next to it, and we'd like the applicant to actually draw the driveway and parking for the condominium project next to this building, so we have a better understanding of the relationship between those two projects. They will need a CSM to create the 2 lots for this project, and it will need a cross-access and parking agreement between the 2 buildings. The existing development plan does note a curving sidewalk, and looking at the aerial photo, for some reason, they didn't put in the curving sidewalk, they just put in a straight sidewalk. So you can skip the next provision in our report. Their landscape plan lacks front street trees and front foundation plantings. They do have to widen the traffic control islands within their parking lot and put shade trees within those. They note a pedestrian or bike link to this building, but not to the other. They should add that. They know a bike rack for one building, but the other, they should also add that. They note a trash container for one building, but the other, they should also add that. And we do need a lighting plan for the project, although we expect the wall packs for these buildings will probably be enough to handle that smaller parking lot. Site grading, traffic, and other city services are also noted in the report. We've recommended approval of this amendment to the general development plan. We've recommended approval of these 2 CBRFs. We provided a draft letter for Plan Commission's consideration on the site plan. Its conditions state to provide 6 copies of a revised site plan showing the drive at a right angle to the street, noting that's a public street. Provide either an agreement for the maintenance of that trail or move the property line so it's not on this lot. Show us the condominium units, parking, and driveway. You can skip condition E. Revise the landscape plan providing street trees, front foundation plantings, and the 2 traffic control islands in the parking lot. Provide then the additional bike lane or sidewalk connections for both buildings, the same with the bike racks for both buildings, the same with the dumpsters for both buildings, and then provide a lighting plan either with those wall packs, which we will review with the permits. We need the CSM with a cross-access or parking agreement. The transit agreement is also then noted. What we do with these projects, if they have a paratransit need, is we have them enter into an agreement where the developer or the development pays for us providing service, or they simply just provide their own van service for the needs of the residents out here, because it's some distance from the city, and for us to be driving out there, it can be a considerable cost. We do need engineers' approval of drainage, and they will need to enter into a development agreement to construct the street and utilities to the project. And with that, I answer questions.
Any questions for Darrell? Commissioner Mitchell?
So did I understand you to say that they either have to enter into a paratransit agreement with the city,
Yes.
or they might provide their own?
Normally, we still have them enter into agreement, because if a residence in the facility calls us, we have to go out there, even though they may have their own service. The other facility that already exists out there has its own service, and I believe most of the time that service covers it. And all the agreement does is, if these folks call us, we got to go out there and we're going to send them the bill that, hey, we had to drive all the way out there because your folks are calling us. And normally they'll tell the folks, use our service, don't call the city. So.
Do you know the reasoning for the state to to limit it to 16, or is there?
It's an old state law. It's been around for 35 years. In R1, R2 districts, it's 4, and then you need an exception. And then your multifamily districts, it's 16, and then you need an exception. So these need that exception because state law has been there for many, many, many years.
In the past, when we've had this long list of to-dos, it's been recommended oftentimes from staff to postpone. Do you feel like these are all easily attainable tasks that we don't need to?
In this case, they are. A lot of it just is the repetitiveness of this being the building they're going to build, this being the future building. I expected they intended to show those improvements, but since it was a future building, they didn't show them. So
Sure. Commissioner Mitchell?
Also, do you know the reasoning for the 2,500 feet distance? I mean,
No.
what's that about?
well, again, it's an old provision in state law. It has to do with trying to limit the number of community-based residential facilities in any given area. And normally that isn't a concern with these types of facilities because they're a very quiet facility. But a CBRF can include a huge range of different types of people living in them, and sometimes they do become a concern if there is a concentration within a neighborhood.
Any other? Commissioner Peterson?
On the existing development plan, it shows the middle access to the condos is pretty much on the east side of the trail that crosses the
Yes.
waterway.
That's what we want to see.
That's really in the footprint of the new building.
That's why we want to see how are they going to provide that access for this project and that parking lot for this project, given where they placed this building.
Otherwise, they're
And
gonna
either
have-
they're modifying this condominium plan, which that means that needs to be amended, or they need to move this project slightly to the east, and they got room to do it, and put in the drive and parking like it's shown here. One of the two, it appears to us, has to happen.
Would that come back before your staff? Or?
It would come back to our staff as an administrative change, those types of minor changes, yes.
Okay, and you feel confident that,
Yes.
thank you.
Commissioner Ebert?
I think he already answered the question. They need to amend the condominium plat then to remove that land for a different purpose.
Our understanding is the condominium plat as of now only exists for phase 1.
Okay.
They have approval to add phase 2. It was a preliminary condo plat beyond that, and our understanding, it has not been actually a recorded document for a condominium plat. But you should
Okay.
ask the applicant that
Okay,
question when they
thank
get
you.
up here.
The phase 2 has not been recorded, or?
That's our understanding. But
Okay.
you could again ask the applicant that question when they get up here.
Okay. Any other questions for Darrell? That's it, thank you. Is the applicant here? Would you mind coming up? Good evening.
Good evening, folks. How are you?
Good.
Good. Well,
Anything-
I'm Nick Semling with the Construction Hub, and this is Dan Peckel, actual purchaser of the property in question here. And we have Steve Wiggins here also in the back. He's the owner of the part that's not recorded yet of that piece of land, and he's the one who's selling off this part to Dan, so I'm kind of helping facilitate all that. So if you have a question directly about that other parcel, I just asked Steve back there if it is recorded, and it's not recorded, I guess, for that official phase 2. That was the plan, but it's not officially recorded. Right, Steve? Correct. Okay.
Okay. Any other additions to the presentation, or any concerns with the list of recommendations or things that we're asking for?
No, it sounds reasonable. I mean, I've been through the process with a different company before like this and in different cities. Seems very reasonable. We are working with Lean and Peterson on the site plan that got submitted here, and they seemed comfortable with what was coming to this meeting. And then some of the questions that come out of it, I like it because it really gives us a chance to align with what the city really wants. When we get, instead of throwing out everything that we think and then some and going, well, you know, that's not what we were looking for anyway. Now we can fill in the blanks and make sure it's right.
Any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Peterson?
Do you have any problems with the recommendations in the staff letter?
No. No, I've read through the staff letter, and, you know, the official CSM isn't done yet. I guess I'm looking down. For the way that road needs to come through with the bike trail, and we can finalize that with Steve, who owns the other land there. Changing the road to a right angle, all very simple things, like they said, administrative type things, I think we can handle.
So the question in regards to the property line running through that walking path, and if it's not a recorded, if that phase 2 isn't recorded, does that still need to be cleared up, or, I mean?
If the property line runs down the middle of the trail, in our mind, then this memory care and assisted living facility needs to be tied to the maintenance of the trail. If that's not the intent, and they're gonna not be tied to the maintenance, then they should move the property line over slightly.
Yep.
What is your understanding of where that property line is?
Well, that, exactly what he said is our understanding also. It's not finally determined yet because of the process of going through with that, the way the land needs to be split. The engineer in town hasn't gotten to composing the official CSM yet,
Okay,
so.
okay. Any other questions? Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Again, I'll ask if there's anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Wiggins? All right, we'll close the public hearing portion. Looking for a motion to approve the rezoning and site for both the 20-unit CBRFs and the site plan.
I'll move approval.
With staff recommendations for both?
Yes, minus E, right?
Okay. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is passed. Congratulations. Thank you. Agenda item number 3 for a public hearing, final action, a conditional use permit for residential off-street parking for 204 East Grand Avenue.
This is the property at Graham Avenue and Grand Avenue. And it's in our downtown. And that's an aerial photo of the former Wells Fargo Bank. And within your packet are floor plans. This is the 3rd floor, which is the same as the 4th and 5th, showing then the layout of the units within each level. The request is to allow the off-street parking for the proposed residential portion in this building to be located within 500 feet of the site. The upper 4 floor plan, the 4 floors, top floors are proposed to be converted to apartments. There's a total of 20 units shown and 25 total bedrooms. They're all 1 or 2 bedroom units, and the parking requirement thus is 25 stalls. The Planning Commission may allow a 10% reduction for transit, 5% reduction for the bike parking, which they put in the basement, bringing their parking requirement down to 22 stalls. An applicant is proposing then to contract the parking requirement for this apartment within the city parking ramp on Farwell Street. We note the provisions in city code applicable to this type of request. In terms of the likelihood that they're going to be parked on the street, on-street parking is limited in the downtown area. There's no overnight parking, and 2-hour and metered parking also are restrictions in the downtown area. And again, the provisions of city code require this to be tied to a contract, so applicant will need to secure and maintain that parking contract with the city for the residential uses in this building. Any changes in that contract would have to come back to the Plan Commission. In terms of the first and second floor of this building, they are intended to be used for commercial space. They have a grandfather right since their previous use was office, and they'd only have to come back to Plan Commission for review if they change the use of the commercial space to, say, like a restaurant, which typically then increases the parking requirement, and it'd come back before the Plan Commission. We have recommended approval of this request with conditions. Applicant must secure and maintain a contract with the city for at least 22 parking stalls within the Farwell Street parking ramp, and any changes in the use of the lower two floors from office use to others will require Plan Commission review of its parking. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Commissioner Ebert?
I have a question on the parking garage more than this building.
Yes.
How many total units are in that parking garage?
400 to 500, I'm going to guess. 420.
Okay, and how many are already contracted out through the city, through the US Bank building, through the hotel and stuff?
There are probably about 3 to 320 contracted, although we have noted an interest from a significant number of the, or not an interest, but a willingness from some of those contracts to simply move the contract to the new parking ramp,
Okay.
if need be, to free up parking in the Farwell.
Okay. So we do have adequate spots available within this parking garage?
They will have to make room if there's not, or the applicant won't be able to get a contract, but
Okay.
those types of negotiations are going on at this time,
Okay, thank you.
and they'll have to get it.
Okay.
Okay.
Commissioner Mitchell?
So the availability of parking in the ramp is outside of our purview, so we can still grant this request, and then they go to see if they can get the spaces.
Correct. They'd go to council actually for the contract to get approved for the spaces, yes.
Any other questions? When the city grants them their stalls, are they designated, are they specific stalls that are marked, or is there signage, or?
Oh,
No.
Todd, do you know?
They're not signed, I think they can park wherever they
Okay.
like, except for the city, they're limited to the top couple floors.
There's city employees over there also, yes.
Okay. Any other questions for Darrell? Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Is the applicant here? Good evening.
Good evening. Alex Paternos, representing JCAT. Pretty much just any
Anything you care-
questions for me?
Anything you wish to add, or everything?
We do have I have a email from Leah Ness saying that they're already working on a contract based on $36 per stall per month. So, we've actually got 8 more than we actually need. We're going for 30 stalls, just in case a restaurant does want to move into that bank, you know, the vault area.
Any questions for the applicant? The timeline for you guys, as far as how soon do you,
Right now, the time crunch is the second floor. We've got a law firm that's actually interested in moving in, so maybe late November. Fingers crossed. Nothing's in writing yet, but that's kind of where the focus is right now.
and then the apartment sometime next year? or-
Yeah, we're gonna move down from the 6th floor, you know, a floor at a time. We got to be careful. Once there's a law firm in there, we don't want to be going up and down and making too much of a racket. So we're gonna try to do one floor at a time. It seems like the most
Okay,
feasible way.
okay.
But we're thinking 6th floor by spring.
Okay. Great. Thanks for coming up.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Again, I'll ask if there's anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item. Seeing none, looking for a motion to approve the conditional use permit for residential off-street parking for 204 East Grand. Commissioner Seymour.
I'll move approval.
We have a motion
I'll second.
and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is passed. Congrats, thanks. Agenda item number 4 for recommendation. Final plat for Hidden Meadow Phase 2.
This is Hidden Meadow property off Dreyer in Harless. And that's the preliminary plat of the project with most of the interior lots under construction. Phase 2 is the northern lots. And there's then Phase 2, again, the lots along Harless and down on Dreyer. The final plat is consistent with the approved preliminary plat. It creates 11 more lots for single-family development, and we have recommended approval.
Any questions for Darrell? Sweeney, thank you. Is the applicant here? Want to come up, just in case?
Hi there, Steve Wiggins.
Anything you care to add?
I don't.
Okay, any questions?
I have a
for Mr.
question.
Sure.
Why are you always last on the agenda?
That's a good question. Yes.
Phase 1 went well?
It's going well.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, it looks different.
Yeah, it does look different.
Yeah.
It's good to see, though. I guess there's no questions. Thanks for coming up.
Thanks.
Anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Can I ask if there's anyone here that wishes to speak to this agenda item? Seeing none, looking for a motion for recommendation for the final plat, approval of Hidden Meadow Phase 2.
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second? We have a
I'll second.
second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is passed. Congrats. Thank you. Agenda item number 5 for discussion and direction, restaurants, taverns, and others.
The Plan Commission requested a discussion item be placed on its agenda concerning zoning code definitions for taverns, restaurants, and other uses where alcohol or food is served. And it appeared the commission was interested in discussing other ways of reviewing taverns or restaurants based on activities within the buildings. We did attach the Water Street Commercial District standards that provide city's current definitions and review criteria for Water Street. And there's a distinction between a tavern, a restaurant that serves alcohol, and a restaurant that does not serve alcohol. With restaurant not serving alcohol is a permitted use. Restaurant that serves alcohol is a conditional use, and taverns now in the 2 through 500 block are prohibited. There's 11 existing taverns and no new ones are allowed for that area. And that set of provisions is unique just for the Water Street area. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the community. We then also attached zoning code definitions from 8 other communities. It did appear at least 3 of those communities made a distinction between, again, a restaurant that served alcohol and a restaurant that didn't serve alcohol, so we assume they have some different zoning code provisions applicable to them. We did not find any codes that define taverns as ones that serve food or that did not serve food. We did find many codes, though, that had definitions for brewery or brew pubs, which is not provided in the City of Eau Claire code. So there's your discussion item. I can certainly answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions for Darrell? Commissioner Ebert.
The question of brew pubs brings up kind of an interesting thing because they're brewing the product that they're selling.
Yes.
Do we need something? Because we've got 3 or 4 of them now in the city.
The issue with a brew pub is the Lazy Monk is primarily a brewery, and therefore needed industrial zoning. And fortunately, their site had industrial zoning. And then the tap room becomes an accessory use. The next one that comes in, the brewing project, just north of there, is again our understanding, we meet with them tomorrow, primarily a brewery which needs industrial zoning, and fortunately they have industrial zoning. And then there are other activities, again, the tap room, restaurant, and other future uses, if they have them, will become accessory and incidental to that. The other ones then that we've seen, say Northwood's Brew Pub was primarily a restaurant, and the brewery was accessory.
So it
And
didn't need
therefore, it
industrial
didn't need
zoning.
industrial zoning, it was allowed in a commercial district.
So where's the dividing line?
It's a 50-50 type call, and I know what these communities have probably gone into is they've basically said a brew pub, even though, or brewery, even though it primarily may be just the brewery and the tap room is accessory, they're probably allowing them in commercial districts, is maybe what these other communities are doing. So that's, I believe, what's going on in other communities. Having recently returned from Oregon, where I couldn't believe all the brew pubs that exist out there. They have had to done something like that because they're all over in the central business districts of communities. So
Do you anticipate more of this kind of industry? I mean, it seems to be kind of a trend,
Yeah.
which is why I'm thinking about it.
it may or may not be. I just brought it up because it seemed like the Plan Commission was looking for restrictions on taverns, and here we might be talking about loosening up the reins on brew pubs. So I didn't want to get into too much other than to answer your questions. So.
Commissioner Mitchell.
I was interested in perhaps a different way of defining a tavern. Right now, it's if 51% of your sales are alcohol, then it's a tavern, right?
It's really slightly more than that. If you go on page 44 in the packet, you'll see the definitions down the bottom. Tavern shall be defined as establishment other than a restaurant in which alcoholic beverages are sold for consumption. And then the restaurant is the more lengthy definition, where it talks about majority of gross net income, hours, allocation of staffing, predominant use of floor space, name, appearance, and advertising of the entity. So we primarily define what a restaurant is, and then a tavern becomes the default.
Just to clarify though, is this for the city or is this just for Water Street?
It's just for Water Street.
So we have,
It's unique
I'm
for
sorry.
Water Street, and the reason being, because that's where the past plan commissions and councils have felt a need to more strongly regulate these types of activities.
Commissioner Mitchell.
So do we have a definition for the city?
We do, in the zoning code. Maybe. Here it is. Oops. Still pushing the wrong button. So again, it's a lengthy definition for tavern that exists in the zoning code.
And then may I,
Yes.
the last place we were talking about, the Kaiser Building place, that was defined as a gastro pub.
Right.
Now, what's that?
Again, that's their definition. We have to make a determination as to it either being a restaurant or a tavern. And we get very wary about these facilities, particularly in the Water Street area or in the downtown area. We find a lot of these places actually operate as a restaurant till about 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and then they literally become a tavern. But you know, if you look at it from a day-long perspective, they probably are primarily either one or the other. But it's not a black and white, it's a gray situation in terms of where they are. When I look at the Menominee Street situation, I know in talking with the applicant, there was an uncomfortableness that he may not operate that as a restaurant and meet the 51% food sales, and that's why he felt he was just going to come in and get a tavern approval. I know that as a fact, but there are probably other things going on in terms of his plans for operation of the facility.
Commissioner Larson.
Thank you. Of course, I was part of the discussion both here and at City Council as Commissioner Mitchell was on the Kaiser Building. And I guess what I was looking for was a more definitive description of, we don't have to use this term, I don't really like the term gastropub, it sounds kind of uncomfortable to me. But, but whatever that is, one of the points that came up in the Plan Commission discussion about that is that Commissioner Mitchell talked about having a condition on the permit that they had to serve food such that they were subject to inspection by the health department. Well, it turns out all that is a pizza oven, or all it can be is a pizza oven, and that qualifies. What I was looking for was something that's a little more descriptive of what a restaurant slash pub is, where they're serving real food that's prepared on a grill or whatever. You know, I'm hoping we can find something that requires a little more than a pizza oven for the kind of business that he was describing for the Kaiser Building.
Yeah, and again, our research never found it. We found communities that distinguish between a restaurant and a restaurant that served alcohol and a tavern, but we never found anybody that had at least definition of a tavern that served food. We couldn't find that one, so.
Commissioner Granlund?
I think it looks like some of it falls underneath that stipulation of that it's advertising of its advertising campaign is part of its reputation or part of its intent is how it presents itself to the public. Is there maybe more that we can ask from a submittal regarding what in fact their advertising campaign might look like? Much like the signage plan or an expanded version of the signage plan.
Yes, and we've done that with other applications. A good example is, I think it's the Players downtown here. Playmakers, thank you. That was another one where it was very interesting. Well, is that a restaurant or is it a tavern? And we got into that in terms of what's their advertising plans for that facility and things like that for that location. So we have done that administratively in the past.
Commissioner Mitchell?
I see the Director of the Environmental Health Division of the Health Department sitting in the back of the room, so he can correct me if I say this wrong now, but the definition's going to be extremely important because the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection has now determined that the Health Department can no longer inspect taverns. And so it will, and that's a real concern for us. And so it's another reason why, if there's any way to nail down these definitions, I'd like to see a tavern be a place that, well, I don't know what I'd like, but the definition is really important now.
I do know that most restaurants that are truly operating as a restaurant also have hours of operation that are different than taverns. They normally are not open till the 2 in the morning bar time. They normally close at 11 or 12 o'clock. There are a few all-night restaurants, but that's a whole different animal. You know, like McDonald's is open all night, that type of thing, so.
Commissioner Ebert.
I have just a quick question. How far does the Water Street Commercial District extend? What block does it end on?
The Water Street plan,
Yeah,
that
the-
district there, I believe it ends on, and I'm going to say believe, there's actually a map. I believe it ends on the 500 block,
Okay. So it ends at the corner of Fifth and Water,
6th and Water.
Sixth and Water?
Yeah.
Okay,
The plan, I think, actually extends further.
okay.
But this district, these zoning provisions apply to the 2 through 500 block.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Granlund.
In a facility such as a hotel that may have also both a restaurant and a bar within it, is that, they're treated as separate facilities? Separate permits, separate, or,
I think that varies also. I think sometimes they license the whole building, where other times they may license each of the facilities.
and would that?
Again, that gets
would
into
fall within that
licensing
new
also.
change in inspections too?
You'd have to get inspectors up here, right? From a zoning perspective, we would view that as a hotel, as the primary use with accessory restaurant and taverns inside of it. So the zoning review of that, that's a hotel. We may look at the restaurant's seating capacity for parking requirements, but it's looked at differently in terms of it going into a hotel facility. The restaurants and bars in this facility across the road, that's a hotel to us. We didn't look at it in terms of a restaurant or bar or anything. So, again, you have to remember there's different sets of provisions here, zoning provisions, licensing for liquor, inspections for health department. You know, there's 3 different sets of provisions at least that we're looking at when you talk about these types of issues.
Just to clarify with the new enactment that was in regards to the Department of Agriculture, the Kaiser building that we just approved, we approved as a tavern, so let's say 49% of their business is food, yet they still are not going to be inspected? Because they have a
They had to
tavern?
get, they had to get the food license.
You have a condition on that,
Okay.
that says they have to get a health department food inspection.
Okay, but
As a part of its
aside from the Kaiser building, then, say another tavern that serves up to 49% food and prepares food and,
And no, if it's preparing food, I believe they're going to be inspected by health department.
okay. So if they're a tavern, when aren't they going to be inspected?
If they're not serving any food
Any
other than
food at
maybe
all.
popcorn or something like that. Yep.
Okay,
Once they get into food service, then it's going to trigger an inspection by those
Okay.
folks.
okay.
You'd have to get Shane up here to answer the details of that stuff.
Any other questions or direction or thoughts or what, Commissioner Peterson?
With a microbrewery or a brew pub or a brewery, are they also licensed to serve wine and liquor?
See, there you get into all sorts of interesting things because my understanding, a brewery is licensed by the Department of Agriculture and is exempt from state licensing for alcohol. So these breweries, they get a state agricultural license, and then their tap room is simply a tasting room. It's the way I understand it.
A paid tasting room and
That's the way I
repetitive
understand it.
tasting?
Yeah.
But
Now, the
Can
ones
they
that have
serve-
occurred from a zoning perspective, a brewery, if it's primarily a brewery, it needs industrial zoning. It can have an accessory tap room. A restaurant, it can have an accessory restaurant. If they come in as primarily a restaurant within an accessory brewery, then they can go in a commercial area, which is what we've seen with some of them also. So
What-
there's an interesting distinction there.
is Monk's allowed to serve wine and liquor?
My guess, I'm going to literally say guess, is that they're a tap room serving their beer.
Okay. I'll
And
have to
root
make-
beer.
I'll have to do some research.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's a good question, having again been out in Oregon and the breweries out there, they serve everything, even though it's a brewery. Yep.
Mr. Granlund?
We, having designed
Yes.
designed the brewery over here with its tap room, they're actually even forbidden from allowing you to bring your own outside beverage of any kind in. I believe it's a state licensing issue with that they are allowed to present their own product. Apparently, they can also market additional beers by other producers, but there's not another layer. We did work for the owner of Norske Nook and the other brew pub before he moved out from here. He said he had actually a very unique state license from before, the very specific moment before there was an exclusion of any of the parcels like that again. He had, because of the restaurant license, he had a state license for the brewery as a very short time period
Okay.
that allowed him to run a bar and restaurant and brewery together. Since a few years after he began that facility, that licensing type has not been available from the state. So when it's been a brewery with a tap room, it's exclusive to beer.
Interesting.
Commissioner Hebert.
I actually have a question for Greg.
Sure.
So in that situation where you've got a brewery and they can serve their own product, can they also serve things like pop and water, or are they is restricted just to what they produce?
No, it's with the alcoholic beverage, because
Okay.
it's almost like the kind of the non-pasteurized milk kind of situation. If you take it off the farm, you can't sell it again.
Sure.
Obviously, the beer is produced the way it's gonna go into the cans, but it's essentially an issue of you're kind of putting it on the table before it goes in the bottle, so it's not,
Okay.
that's what you're going there for, is to have it fresh.
Okay.
But yeah, beer, I mean, the water, pop, those are things that are non-alcoholic, they're not the same kind of risk.
They're not regulated. Okay, thank you.
I guess Commissioner Mitchell, was there something you wanted to gather specifically, or do we need to discuss?
I can add one more comment. The Water Street restrictions took almost 20 years to get in place in this community. Literally, we've had probably 3 or 4 in the past 4 years have come in the 200 through 500 block and want to do another tavern, and we tell them they're prohibited, they're no longer allowed. But it took literally 20 years to get that in place in this community, so just so you folks know.
Commissioner Larson.
I don't have any interest in changing what we have on Water Street as far as the restrictions, but I'm still, would like to, I still wish we could have some kind of a definition of what a gastropub is.
Well, we can continue
Something
our
more than a
research.
pizza oven.
We can continue our research, but the 8 communities we looked into, and others, never had something like that. But we can continue. It's essentially a tavern that serves food, is essentially what it is.
Mr. Peterson.
I think gastropub is just a definition thing. It's either a tavern that serves food or a restaurant that serves alcohol.
Yeah.
We have a definition right there. I think, I don't know if we need to define these colloquial terms that are thrown across the board.
We have a definition of a restaurant that serves alcohol. Its primary sales has to be food. And what the commission is asking, is there anybody else that have done it the other way? A tavern that serves food, its primary sales is alcohol.
And it's my opinion that a gastropub should fall into one of those 2 categories, and the term that's used is irrelevant.
Yes. We can keep researching, but we haven't seen it yet.
Commissioner Larson.
It's on Wikipedia. But I understand, that is not,
We can see if other communities are doing it, as I assume what you're asking.
yeah, it is.
Okay.
Well, maybe we can be the first, you know?
We can be the first, yes. We've done other things as the first, so.
Okay, a work in progress. Thank you. Any code compliance items? No, any future agenda items? Any corrections or changes to the minutes from the last meeting? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.
This is a rebroadcast of the Eau Claire City Plan Commission. This program was recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television. Chippewa Valley Community Television is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067 or on the web at www.cvctv.org.